Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm particularly proud to be invited here today and to share a platform with, there are many distinguished guests, but particularly, if I can mention but two, His Excellency Dr. Al-Hashimi. It's a pleasure to be on a platform with him. And the other person I want to mention is Tahar Bamidra. Those two individuals, Dr. Hashimi, first of all, to think of his personal sacrifice, his own sacrifice, the fact that he has lost two brothers and a sister, hoods, is unbearable to think of. To look at and to be able to share this event with Tahar Bamidra, a man who at the height of his career representing the United Nations, who had the courage to step down and say, enough's enough, we're not... going to endorse the deceit of people like Martin Kobler. And it's about that I want to speak. This evening. I want to speak, sadly, about the failure of my government, of the United States government, and of the United Nations. Each is either being conned or is turning a blind eye to the reality of what is happening in Iran and what is happening in Iraq. There are many. Let me just finally, in my acknowledgements, acknowledge that amongst the Iranian refugees here this evening, there are also many heroes. And I represent, if I may, a group of 500 parliamentarians in the United Kingdom who are deeply concerned. There are a tight little group of us who try to give direct support, but there are about 500 of our peers and members of Parliament who do support the PMOI and who want to see justice for those people. That Nouri al-Maliki, without the requirement of much persuasion, is influenced by the mullahs of Iran. We know that since 2009, the Iranian refugees in Iraq, who have been in Iraq for 25 years, now that they are disarmed, have been subjected to 5 outrageous attacks where many have been killed, about 100 altogether, at least 100, and where 52 people on the 1st of September were bound, handcuffed, and then callously shot down. That number of people callously shot by the authority and the orders of Nouri al-Maliki. Make no mistake, it was his SWAT team. It was no one else. It was his SWAT team acting under the persuasion, perhaps, of the mullahs who committed that awful atrocity. Even going in to make sure that people that they had fatally injured and who had been taken into to be cared for, that there was a bullet put in their heads as they lay helpless. And let's not forget that there are 7 other people who are hostage. 6 women and a man. We know that they're hostages. We know they're in Baghdad. We know that al-Maliki knows where they are. We know the Americans know where they are. I've reason to believe the United Nations know where they are. And we're simply not doing enough to secure their release. I find it very difficult. I contacted a very famous program on the BBC. It's a late-night program. I spoke to one of their presenters, with whom I've been friends for many years. He'd been out of the country and he hadn't even heard of the slaughter of 52 refugees. Let me ask this. What is wrong with our government? A minister in the government who has been helpful to me, Alistair Burt, he has tried to highlight the plight of the refugees in Camp Ashraf. And ladies and gentlemen, do you know that it's difficult to believe, but in the last change of government, he was removed as a Foreign Office minister, not to be given another portfolio. He was removed. What is going on? And I hope that people from the European Union who are here today will ask that question about my government and about your government and about all the so-called Western governments that should be concerned. If the governments were concerned, I believe the press would be. But my friend in that program, he rang me up, he talked to me for half an hour, he did what he could, and the powers that be at the BBC would not carry a program. I volunteered, obviously, to turn up and present what was happening. So that's what we're faced with. If we, and I know we do, if we support the Iranian refugees, if we want to see al-Maliki tagged and politically controlled, I don't believe it's possible, but if we want to move in that direction, then we have got to ensure that the press, the Western press, is a lot more assiduous than it has been to date in terms of the victims in Iraq and in Iran. In Iran, you probably know that this year alone there have been over 400. The good doctor, His Excellency, mentioned those who had been executed in Iraq. In Iran, there have been 470 executions this year, 231 of them from this very reasonable, very moderate, very promising, God help us, President Rouhani came into power. And I was listening, when I sat in my room today, I listened to the news. And our government is talking about the opportunity there's going to be. Well, Mr. Rouhani's no fool. He's been about for a long time. He's been involved in the persecution of his own people. But he does want the West to ease up on issues that cause economic difficulty for Iran. And it horrifies me that my Foreign Secretary, William Hague, and Kerry in America, and people like that, are suggesting that somehow we can do business. Those of us who believe in democracy, those of us who believe in freedom, we should make it very clear. We cannot and we will not do business with dictators who persecute their own people. It strikes me that for my government and the American government to ask Nouri al-Maliki to carry out an inquiry into the slaughter at Camp Ashraf is so ridiculous. It's like sending the fox into the hen house to count the chickens. Rouhani, to come back to just one point I wanted to make about Rouhani, he hasn't changed. Before he became president, I think there were about 60, 65 nuclear scientists engaged on developing nuclear energy, inverted commas. There are now 97 engaged, an increase of 50%, and he wants the West to believe, and the West does believe apparently, that he's sincere. Before I sit down, can I say one thing? There are many things I'd like to say, but one thing I want to say is this: the hostages must be our priority in the short term. The reality is this, and I'm somebody with my background in Irish politics and having been one of the negotiators of the Belfast Agreement. The one thing I dread are hunger strikes. And we have some responsibility, the reaction to have a hunger strike that is spread amongst many of the Iranians is something that worries me. 47 days, I think it is. I would like to see governments making some sort of a tangible promise now, and I'd like to see, and I say this with all humility, I'd like to see those who are on hunger strike accepting, being able to accept a guarantee from our European Union countries that would enable them to come off. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, honoured guests, can I say we must encourage, however we do it, we must encourage action. Words at this moment, we've all been here, we've said it before, words are not enough. We've got to have action from our government. That means that if I've got to camp on the door of 10 Downing Street, I should be prepared to do it. So let's go out of here with new determination to get the press and to get our politicians single-mindedly pursuing what is a just and honourable course, and in His Excellency Dr. Hashimi and in Tahir we have wonderful examples. Thank you.